Leave her alone. Ethan Carter did not shout, but the words traveled across Martha Lewis's coffee shop with enough force to stop the grinder behind the counter. He rose from a small table near the window, his daughter's purple backpack hanging from the chair beside him. At 41, Ethan was broad-shouldered and strong from years of pulling wire through walls, lifting conduit, and working long days without enough help. His faded denim jacket hung open over a dark work shirt, and a pale tattoo curved along one muscular forearm where he had rolled back his sleeve. Across the room, Grant Holloway stood over a woman seated alone with a cooling cup of coffee. "This does not concern you," Grant said. "You are embarrassing her. She is embarrassing herself. Then let her decide that." The woman looked up at Ethan. She appeared to be in her late 30s, white, composed, and plainly dressed in a cream sweater beneath a charcoal coat. Her chestnut hair rested neatly against her shoulders, and her blue eyes held no panic, only careful attention. She had not asked Ethan to intervene. She had not revealed who she was. She had simply asked one question about a contract, and Grant had treated that question like an insult. Around them, the shop smelled of roasted coffee, cinnamon, and wet pavement. Morning rain traced the front windows while customers lowered their voices and pretended not to watch. Behind the counter, Martha gripped a stack of papers with both hands. The 62-year-old owner had spent 23 years building the shop from a narrow storefront into the place where teachers graded papers, nurses stopped after night shifts, and parents waited with children before school. Now Grant had spread a contract across her favorite corner table and told her she had 15 minutes to sign it. "She is interfering in a private business discussion," Grant said. Ethan stepped closer, but he kept several feet between them. "She asked whether Martha has time to read the terms. She is a stranger. So am I." Grant looked at Ethan's work boots, worn jeans, and calloused hands. His mouth tightened with contempt. "Then both of you should stay out of matters you do not understand." Ethan glanced at the contract. The logo at the top belonged to Bennett Urban Foods, the company purchasing several properties along the block. He knew the name because one of its construction projects had advertised electrical subcontracting work he desperately needed. "I understand when someone is being pressured," Ethan said. Grant gave a humorless smile. "You are an electrician, correct?" Ethan's expression changed slightly. "How do you know that? Your company name is on your jacket." Grant pointed toward the stitched Carter electrical patch. "Our development office has your bid. It is waiting for final approval." Martha whispered, "Ethan, please." He knew what she meant. Do not risk it. Do not lose the job. His rent was late. His truck needed tires. His 10-year-old daughter, Lily, was supposed to read an essay at school in less than an hour, and he had promised not to miss it. Grant leaned closer to the table. "Sit down, and perhaps your bid remains under consideration." Ethan looked at Lily, who watched him with worried brown eyes. Then he looked at the woman Grant had dismissed. She had not moved. She seemed to be measuring him now, not asking whether he was brave, but whether his principles survived when they became expensive. Ethan turned back to Grant. "Martha deserves time to read the contract, and this woman deserves basic respect. You are willing to lose a major contract over someone you do not know? I do not need to know her bank account to know you are treating her badly." The coffee shop fell completely still. Grant's face hardened. The woman's gaze shifted to the Bennett Urban Foods logo on the contract, and something quiet changed behind her eyes. Ethan thought he had stood up for an ordinary stranger. He had no idea the woman at the table owned the company whose name Grant was using as a threat. Less than an hour earlier, Ethan had pushed open the coffee shop door with one hand while balancing Lily's school folder beneath the other arm. Morning rain followed them inside in cold drops, and the smell of roasted beans wrapped around them before the door closed. Martha looked up from behind the counter. "You are early." "That is the plan," Ethan said. "A rare and beautiful plan." Lily placed her purple backpack beneath their usual table near the window. "He promised to be at school before my reading starts." Martha raised an eyebrow at Ethan. Did he promise? Or did he say he would try? He promised. Ethan removed his wet denim jacket and draped it across the chair. His dark work shirt pulled across broad shoulders, shaped by years of electrical labor, and a faded tattoo showed along his strong forearm when he rolled back one sleeve. "I will be there." Lily opened her folder and checked the printed essay for the third time. "It starts at 9:30. "I know. The school is 12 minutes away. I know that too. Your job site is in the opposite direction. Ethan sat across from her. I only need to stop there long enough to deliver the revised estimate. Lily studied his tired face. She had learned that her father's promises often began with confidence and ended with a phone call explaining why work could not wait. Do not make me look for you from the stage, she said. The request was quiet, but it carried a boundary. Ethan nodded. You will not have to. Martha brought Lily hot chocolate and set black coffee in front of Ethan. Then she lowered her voice. The company representative is coming this morning. Ethan glanced toward the stack of papers beside the register. About the purchase? They call it a partnership. Do you believe them? Martha looked around the shop she had owned for 23 years. The tables were mismatched, the floor creaked near the pastry case, and one window still carried a small scratch from the winter Lily had pressed a metal toy against it. Nothing was polished enough for a corporate brochure. Everything belonged. I believe they want the location, she said. The rest is language. Ethan opened the contract, but did not read beyond the first page. Have you had anyone review this? The representative said the offer expires today. That is not an answer. It is the only one he gave me. Across the room, the woman in the cream sweater entered alone. She paused near the door, taking in the worn tables, the crowded community board, and the customers Martha greeted by name. She wore no expensive jewelry and carried no assistant, but her posture was controlled and observant. Her name was Claire Bennett, though no one in the shop knew it yet. She had founded Bennett Urban Foods 14 years earlier and built it into a company worth billions. That morning, she had left her driver 2 blocks away and entered without warning her staff because she wanted to see the proposed acquisition as ordinary customers and owners experienced it. She ordered plain coffee, chose a table near Martha, and opened a small notebook. Ethan noticed only that she listened carefully. Lily noticed more. She is watching everything, the girl whispered. Maybe she likes coffee shops. She has not taken one sip. Claire heard Grant Holloway before she saw him. His voice entered through the door ahead of his polished shoes. Martha, I trust we are ready to finish this. He carried a leather folder, and the confidence of a man who believed a deadline became fair when printed on company paper. Claire lowered her eyes to her notebook. Ethan checked the time. 42 minutes remained before Lily's reading. Grant opened the leather folder and placed a silver pin across the final page. 15 minutes is more than enough. Martha remained standing behind the counter. You told me I would have until Friday. The development schedule changed. When? This morning. Who changed it? Grant smiled without warmth. People responsible for decisions larger than this coffee shop. Claire lifted her eyes from the notebook. Ethan checked the clock above the pastry case. 38 minutes remained before Lily's reading. He should have gathered her backpack, left the contract to Martha, and protected the promise he had made. Instead, he noticed the way Grant kept one hand over the lower pages whenever Martha leaned closer. The man was not merely creating urgency. He was controlling what she could see. Claire rose from her table and carried her untouched coffee toward them. What happens if she does not sign today? Grant looked at her as though a chair had spoken. This is a private conversation. You announced the deadline loudly enough for the entire shop. That does not make it your concern. Claire stopped several feet from the table. Does the agreement include a cancellation period? No, a guaranteed lease term. The company provides operational support. That was not my question. Ethan looked toward Claire more carefully. Her voice was calm, but every question had been selected with precision. Grant closed one side of the folder. You are interrupting a legitimate acquisition. Then legitimate answers should be easy. Martha touched the contract. He said the company would protect the staff. Claire turned to her. Does the document guarantee their jobs? Grant answered before Martha could search the pages. Our standard transition language covers staffing. Which page? Claire asked. Grant's jaw tightened. The grinder behind the counter stopped, leaving only rain against the windows and the low hiss of the espresso machine. Lily sat very still at the table, her essay open but forgotten. Grant tapped the first page. Bennett Urban Foods has completed dozens of successful partnerships. Does this partnership allow Martha to end the agreement without selling the property? Claire asked. You clearly do not understand commercial development. Then explain it. I am not required to explain corporate contracts to random customers. He turned toward the barista. Do not serve her anything else. Claire glanced at the full cup in her hand. I did not ask for anything else. A few customers exchanged uncomfortable looks. Martha's face reddened, not from embarrassment for Claire, but from realizing how easily Grant had claimed authority inside a shop he did not own. Ethan stood, then stopped when Lily caught his sleeve. "Dad, the reading," she whispered. He looked at the clock. 31 minutes. "I know. You promised. I am only making sure Martha understands what she is signing." Lily did not release his sleeve. "Is she asking you to?" The question landed quietly. Ethan looked toward Martha. She appeared overwhelmed, but she had not asked him to take control. Claire had not asked him to rescue her either. Both women were already speaking. His place was not to decide for them. It was to make sure Grant did not silence them. Ethan turned to Martha. "Do you want him to stop until you can read everything?" Martha looked down at the contract, then at the shop around her. "Yes." Grant slid the pen closer. "If you refuse today, the offer may disappear." "Then let it disappear," Claire said. Grant faced her fully. "You have caused enough trouble. I ask questions. You challenged my authority in front of a client. Authority that cannot survive questions is not authority." Grant pointed toward the door. "Leave." Claire did not move. Ethan stepped away from Lily's table, careful to keep distance between himself and Grant. "She has not done anything wrong." Grant looked at the Carter electrical patch on Ethan's jacket, and recognition entered his expression. "You submitted a bid for the new development." Ethan said nothing. Grant smiled. "Then you should understand that opportunities depend on professional judgment." "Is that a threat?" "It is advice." Grant turned back toward Claire. "And my advice to you is to leave before you cost this man work he cannot afford to lose." Claire looked at Ethan, seeing the worn jacket, the calloused hands, and the little girl watching the clock. She understood that Grant had found the exact pressure point he wanted. What she did not yet know was whether Ethan's dignity would hold when the cost became personal. Grant's warning settled over the coffee shop like cold air. Ethan looked at Lily first. Her fingers still held the edge of his sleeve, and the clock above the pastry case showed 28 minutes before her reading began. He had promised to be there. He also knew promises lost meaning when they were spoken too easily. "Lily," he said quietly, "take your backpack." Grant gave a satisfied nod. "Good decision." Ethan helped his daughter into her coat, then turned back toward Martha. "Do you want to sign this today?" Martha looked at the contract, at Grant, and then at the customers who had watched her become smaller inside her own business. "No," she said. "I want time." "Then you have your answer," Ethan said. Grant's smile disappeared. "You are making a serious mistake." She answered for herself. "And you are interfering with a company that may decide whether you work next month." Ethan stepped beside Claire, not in front of her. He kept his hands open at his sides and his voice level. "Then your company can decide what kind of electrician it wants. Martha still gets to decide what happens to her shop. You think this makes you honorable?" "No," Ethan glanced at Lily. "I think it makes me late." Lily's face tightened. He felt the consequence before she spoke. "You said I would not have to look for you from the stage." "I know. Are we leaving now?" Ethan looked toward the door. The school was 12 minutes away in light traffic, but the rain had slowed the roads. If they left immediately, they might still make it before her turn. Grant reached for the contract again. "Once you walk out, this offer is withdrawn." Martha's hand trembled, but she pulled the papers away from him. "Then withdraw it." The room changed. The grinder started again behind the counter, but no one resumed talking. Grant stared at Martha as though he had not expected resistance from someone he considered dependent on his approval. Claire watched her with quiet respect. "You heard her," Claire said. "The meeting is over." Grant turned on her. "You do not get to end anything. Neither do you. I represent Bennett Urban Foods." "Then represent it better." His face hardened. "You have caused enough trouble." Ethan moved one step closer, still leaving distance between them. She asked questions. Martha made a decision. That should be the end of it. "You have no idea what you are risking." "I know exactly what I am risking." He tapped the Carter electrical patch on his jacket. A subcontract that would cover 3 months of rent. Grant's eyes flickered with satisfaction. "Then sit down." Ethan shook his head. "No," the answer was quiet. It carried farther than a shout. Grant picked up his phone. "I can have your bid removed before you reach the parking lot." "That is your choice." "And when your daughter asks why there is no money?" Lily looked up sharply. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he did not answer with anger. "Do not bring her into this. She is already in it. She is standing beside a man willing to trade her security for a stranger's feelings." Claire's expression changed. Until that moment, she had watched Grant misuse authority. Now she watched him use a child as leverage. Ethan crouched beside Lily. I am sorry, he said. We may miss your reading. May. The roads are slow. Her eyes filled with disappointment, but she did not look away. Then do not promise that we will make it. Ethan nodded. You are right. I cannot promise that. He stood again. I can promise that I will not pretend this cost nothing. Lily took a slow breath. Then let us go. Ethan picked up her backpack. Before he reached the door, Claire spoke. Mr. Carter. He turned. Thank you, but I did not need you to speak for me. Ethan accepted the correction without defense. You are right. What I needed was room to keep speaking. He glanced at Grant, then back at her. That is what I was trying to protect. Trying is not always the same as doing. Ethan looked at Lily. I am learning that. Claire's gaze softened, but only slightly. So am I. Grant raised his phone and called the regional office. I need Carter Electrical removed from the development list, and I need a report filed on a disruptive customer. A phone began ringing on Claire's table. Every face turned toward it. Claire looked at the Bennett Urban Foods logo glowing on the screen, then at Grant. The color left his face before she even answered. Claire let the phone ring twice before picking it up. Claire Bennett speaking. Grant remained motionless beside Martha's table. The regional office voice on the other end began explaining that a representative named Grant Holloway had requested the removal of Carter Electrical from a development list and had reported a disruptive customer at the coffee shop. Claire kept her eyes on Grant. I am the customer, she said. The room went silent. Even the espresso machine seemed too loud. Grant's hand lowered slowly from his phone. Ms. Bennett, he said, I did not realize you were here. That was the purpose. Claire ended the call and placed her phone beside the untouched coffee. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. I came without notice because I wanted to see how this acquisition was being handled when no executive was expected to watch. Grant straightened his jacket. There has been a misunderstanding. You gave a business owner 15 minutes to sign an agreement she had not fully reviewed. The development schedule required urgency. You hid the lower pages when she tried to read them. I was guiding the discussion. You ordered staff not to serve me because I asked questions. Grant glanced toward the customers, as though their presence had become unfair. I was protecting a private negotiation. Claire's expression remained calm, but disappointment had replaced surprise. You threatened a contractor's livelihood to stop him from supporting a woman's right to decide. Ethan stood near the door with Lily's backpack in his hand. He did not smile. He did not look relieved. He only looked at Martha. Are you all right? Martha pressed both palms against the counter. I think so. Do you want him to leave? She looked at Grant and answered without hesitation. Yes. Claire nodded once. Mr. Holloway, the acquisition is suspended effective immediately. Leave the contract here and return to the regional office. You will not contact Martha or any other owner on this block until the review is complete. Grant stared at her. You are suspending an entire project over one difficult conversation. No, I am suspending it because this conversation revealed how the project is being conducted. I can explain every decision. You will have that opportunity through the formal review. Grant closed the leather folder, then stopped when Claire placed one hand on it. The contract stays. His face tightened, but he released it. He walked toward the door without looking at Ethan. The bell above the entrance rang once, and rain swallowed the sound of his steps. No one applauded. The silence was heavier and more honest than applause would have been. Claire turned toward Martha. You will receive written confirmation that no deadline applies until you have independent time to review every term. Martha studied her carefully. Are you buying my shop? I was considering a partnership. That is not an answer. Claire accepted the challenge. I do not know yet. Not until I understand what my company has been asking people to surrender. Ethan checked the clock. 12 minutes remained before Lily's reading. The school was still 12 minutes away, and the rain had not improved. We need to go, he said. Claire stepped aside. Mr. Carter, your electrical bid will not be removed because of what happened here. Ethan met her eyes. It should not be approved because of it either. I did not say it would be. Good. Lily tugged his sleeve. Dad, right. He opened the door, then paused. Claire expected gratitude. Instead, Ethan looked back at Martha. Call someone you trust before you sign anything. Martha nodded. I will. Then he looked at Claire. Make sure she gets that time. I will. Ethan and Lily hurried into the rain. Claire watched them cross the parking lot toward an aging work truck. She had just revealed that she was a billionaire and the founder of the company controlling the project. Ethan had not asked for a contract, money, or recognition. He had asked whether Martha was safe. Minutes later, Lily sat beside him in the truck as he drove carefully through wet traffic. "We are going to miss it," she said. Ethan looked at the clock. "Yes. You could have left earlier." "Yes. You chose to stay." He tightened his hands on the steering wheel. "Yes." Lily turned toward the rain-covered window. The truth carried no miracle. Standing up for someone had protected Martha's choice, but it had also cost Ethan a promise to his daughter, and no billionaire's identity could erase that. By 11 that morning, Ethan had apologized twice, and neither apology had repaired the empty chair Lily had searched for during her reading. He stood outside her classroom after the final bell, broad shoulders filling the narrow hallway, his denim jacket damp from the rain, and his work boots leaving dark marks on the tile. Lily came out carrying her purple backpack and the essay she had read without him. "Mrs. Palmer recorded it," Ethan said. "I do not want the recording." "I understand." "No, you do not." She looked up at him with the steady disappointment of a child who had learned not to make her pain easier for adults. "You always have a reason." Ethan lowered his eyes. "That is true. And the reason is always important." "Sometimes it is." "Was I important this morning?" The question landed harder than anger. Ethan crouched so they were eye level. "Yes." "Then why were you not there?" He could have explained Grant, Martha, the contract, and the woman he had defended without knowing she was a billionaire. Every detail was true. None of it answered Lily's question. "Because I made a choice," he said. "I believed staying was the right thing to do, but I should not have promised you something I was not certain I could keep." Lily held the essay against her chest. "I did not ask you to save the coffee shop." "I know. I asked you to listen to me read." Ethan nodded slowly. "You have the right to be angry." "I am not only angry." "What else?" "Tired." She walked toward the exit before he could ask more. That evening, Ethan returned to their small rental house and found Lily at the kitchen table reading the essay aloud to an empty chair. He stopped in the doorway. She finished the final paragraph before acknowledging him. "I wanted to hear what it sounded like with someone listening," she said. Ethan removed his jacket and set his phone on the counter. "Will you read it again?" Lily considered him. "You missed the real one." "I know. This does not replace it." "I know that too. And you cannot promise you will never miss anything again." Ethan pulled out the empty chair, but did not sit until she nodded. "No, I cannot promise that." "Then what can you promise?" "That I will check before I say yes. That I will tell you when work might interfere. That I will not call a reason an apology." Lily opened the first page. "Your phone is still on." Ethan switched it off and placed it face down beyond his reach. "Now it is not. You might lose a job. Then I will return the call after you finish." She studied him for one more moment, then began again. Ethan listened to every sentence. When she reached the paragraph about courage, he did not think about Grant or Claire. He thought about the courage required for a child to tell her father that his good intentions still hurt her. Across town, Claire sat alone in a conference room at Bennett Urban Foods with Martha's contract spread before her. The language was polished, but the intention beneath it was not. A steep operating fee appeared on page 7. A property transfer option was buried near the end. Staffing protections lasted only 90 days. Grant had described the agreement as a partnership, yet the document allowed the company to take control while leaving Martha responsible for renovation costs. Claire read every page twice. Then she opened the acquisition records for the entire block. Carter Electrical appeared near the bottom of the subcontractor list with a gray status marker. Rejected by automated vendor screening. She opened Ethan's submission. It included load calculations, lighting plans, equipment estimates, and a proposal to reduce energy use by replacing outdated wiring zones instead of rebuilding the entire electrical system. The projected savings were substantial. The design had never reached a human reviewer because Ethan's small company lacked the corporate revenue history required by the screening program. Claire leaned back in her chair. That morning, she had thought Ethan was risking his future to defend a stranger. Now she understood that her company had already dismissed his work before he ever entered the coffee shop. His refusal to flatter her had not been pride. He had no reason to believe her system respected people like him. Claire called the regional compliance office. Suspend every acquisition contract associated with Grant Holloway. All of them. All of them. That could delay the development by several weeks. then we will be delayed. She made a second decision. Remove automated rejection from the Carter electrical file and send the technical proposal for independent review. Should we mark it as executive priority? No. Claire looked at the calculations again. Mark it for standard technical evaluation. I want to know whether the work is good, not whether I feel grateful. Her third call was to Martha. I found terms that were not explained to you. Martha's voice remained cautious. What happens now? Nothing happens until you decide what you want. Your company still wants the location. Yes. And you still have more power than I do. Claire looked through the glass wall at the city below. Yes. That is why the process has to change before I ask you for an answer. The next morning, Claire arrived at Martha's coffee shop before the first rush. She wore the same charcoal coat, but this time everyone knew who she was. That knowledge changed the room before she spoke. Customers watched her from behind steaming cups. Martha stood at the counter with her arms folded. Ethan entered 10 minutes later carrying a worn folder beneath one arm, Lily beside him with her purple backpack and a guarded expression. You asked us to come, Ethan said. Claire nodded. I found problems in the acquisition contracts and in the contractor screening process. Then fix them. I intend to. Good. I also want to reopen the electrical proposal and the discussions with every business on this block. Ethan looked toward Martha, then toward the neighboring storefronts visible through the rain-streaked window. No, Claire paused. You have not heard the process. I heard enough yesterday. The old process is suspended. The company still holds the power. That is why I am changing how the decisions are made. Ethan placed the folder on the nearest table. They should not negotiate with Bennett Urban Foods at all. Martha's expression sharpened. Ethan, he continued before she could stop him. You saw what Grant did. He hid terms, created deadlines, and threatened anyone who questioned him. The safest decision is to walk away. For you? Claire asked. For everyone. Martha came around the counter. I did not ask you to decide that. Ethan turned toward her. I am trying to protect your shop. From a contract I have not even seen revised. From a company that already showed you what it is. Claire accepted the accusation without interrupting. Martha did not. This shop needs a new electrical panel, a roof repair, and equipment I cannot afford on my own. I may reject their offer. I may negotiate. I may ask for a different partnership. That decision belongs to me. Ethan's jaw tightened. You do not owe them another chance. I do not owe you control either. The words quieted the room. Lily stood near the pastry case, watching her father with the same steady eyes she had used at the kitchen table. Ethan looked at Claire. What exactly are you offering? Claire placed 3 documents on the table. First, each business owner receives independent review time and separate terms. Second, no property transfer can occur without a clear, signed choice after legal review. Third, your electrical plan goes through a technical test, not an executive favor. And Grant, he has been removed from the project pending the formal review. Pending. He is entitled to a process, just as Martha is. Ethan gave a short, humorless breath. You still believe procedure will protect people. I believe power without procedure protected Grant. That answer stopped him for a moment. Claire looked at Martha. You may decline the meeting. You may bring anyone you trust. You may ask for changes. I will not require one answer from the whole block. Ethan stepped closer to the table. Then I am declining for Carter Electrical and recommending everyone else do the same. Martha turned away from him. The owner of the neighboring print shop, who had entered quietly, spoke from the doorway. I want to hear the offer. Ethan looked surprised. The hardware store owner behind him nodded. So do I. You saw what happened yesterday. We saw it, Martha said. We also saw Claire stop it. Ethan folded his arms. You are trusting a billionaire because she apologized? No, Martha replied. I am trusting myself to ask questions. Lily walked toward her father. Dad, can I say something? Of course. You told me last night that my feelings mattered because they were mine. They do. Then their decisions matter because they are theirs. Ethan looked down at her. This is different. Why? Because they could lose their businesses. Lily's voice remained calm. And I could lose my reading. You still chose for me. The truth was too exact to avoid. Ethan had stood against Grant because one man was using power to silence others. Now, with better intentions and less authority, he was doing the same thing. Claire did not rescue him from the realization. Martha did not soften it. Lily did not withdraw it. Ethan slowly unfolded his arms. I was wrong, he said. Martha waited. I should have asked what you wanted before speaking for you. He looked toward the other owners. All of you. The print shop owner nodded once. Ethan turned to Claire. I will submit the electrical plan for testing. Nothing more until I see the standards. That is fair, and I will not persuade anyone else to accept or reject your offer. Claire gathered the documents, but left copies on the table. Then we can begin with everyone speaking for themselves. Ethan looked at Lily. I keep learning this lesson from you. She adjusted the strap of her backpack. Maybe stop making me repeat it. For the first time that morning, Martha smiled. Ethan did too, though quietly. His mistake had cost him trust, but he did not try to repair it with a speech. He stepped back from the center of the room and gave the choice back to the people who owned it. 3 days later, the back half of Martha's coffee shop became a meeting room. 2 tables were pushed together beneath the community bulletin board, and every business owner on the block received the same packet before anyone spoke. Claire stood near the counter in a navy suit, but she did not take the head seat. The old acquisition terms are withdrawn, she said. No shared deadline. No combined vote. Each owner chooses separately. Martha opened her copy. And if I say no, your current ownership remains unchanged. No penalty? None. The print shop owner raised a hand. What if I want the partnership, but not the property transfer? Then we negotiate only the services you want. The hardware store owner pointed to the legal review section. Who pays for independent counsel? Bennett Urban Foods will cover a fixed review allowance, but the lawyer works for you, not for us. Ethan sat beside Lily near the wall, his worn folder closed on his lap. He listened instead of answering for anyone. Each time someone asked a question, he waited for Claire or the owner to respond. That restraint did not come naturally. It came from remembering Martha's face when he had tried to decide her future, and Lily's voice when she reminded him that protection without choice was still control. Claire moved to the next document. The contractor screening process is also suspended for this project. Technical proposals will be tested through demonstrated performance, documented safety, and cost. Ethan finally spoke. What is the test? A live energy audit here at the shop, followed by a limited installation on one electrical zone. The results will be measured for 30 days. Who chooses the measurements? You submit your expected results. An independent technical team verifies them. And if the plan fails, you are paid for the audit, not awarded the larger contract. Ethan nodded. Fair. Martha looked between them. What does his plan change? Ethan opened his folder only after she asked. Your wiring was expanded in pieces over 20 years. The refrigerator circuit, lighting, and espresso equipment pull through inefficient sections at different times. The company proposal replaces almost everything. Mine separates the high-load zones, updates the panel, and replaces only the lines, creating measurable loss. Claire placed the original automated rejection beside his estimate. His proposal projected lower renovation cost and reduced energy use, but no person reviewed it. The room quieted. Ethan looked at the gray rejection status that had once ended the opportunity without a conversation. The clue was not his confidence. It was the detailed plan the system had ignored. The live audit began the following morning before the shop opened. For 6 hours, Ethan measured current draw, voltage loss, equipment cycles, and heat across the aging circuits. He labeled every reading, explained where his assumptions could be wrong, and asked Martha before moving any equipment. Claire remained in the shop, but did not interfere. Lily sat at a corner table finishing homework while Martha served customers around the testing equipment. At noon, the refrigeration compressor started while both espresso machines heated and the overhead lights remained at full brightness. The voltage dropped in the oldest section exactly where Ethan's calculations predicted. He repeated the measurement twice. That confirms the waste, Claire said. It confirms the problem, Ethan answered. It does not prove my repair will solve it. Then we test the repair. The limited installation began the following Monday after Martha approved the schedule. Ethan replaced one overloaded section, separated the refrigeration load, and installed monitoring equipment that everyone could read. He submitted a written range before the first wire was changed. If energy use failed to fall within that range, the larger project would stop. If equipment performance became unstable, the old configuration would be restored. He did not promise Martha a miracle. He gave her a test she could understand. During the same week, Claire completed the formal review of Grant's conduct. His messages showed that he had shortened deadlines, hidden unfavorable terms, and linked contractor opportunities to personal compliance without authorization. She removed him from acquisition responsibilities and required every affected agreement to be reviewed. She also discovered that regional bonuses had rewarded fast signatures without measuring how clearly terms were explained. That incentive had not ordered Grant to act as he did, but it had encouraged the wrong behavior. Claire changed the bonus structure, added owner-confirmed review periods, and required separate approval before any property transfer could be included in an operating partnership. She did not announce the changes as a public victory. She corrected the structure that had allowed pressure to replace consent. The 30-day test demanded patience from everyone. On the fourth day, the energy numbers improved, but not enough. Ethan returned after closing and found that one aging refrigeration unit was cycling more often than the equipment record showed. He adjusted the expected baseline rather than hiding the difference. On the ninth day, the shop experienced its busiest morning of the month. Every machine ran, the lights remained steady, and the monitoring system stayed within Ethan's projected range. On the 15th day, Martha asked whether she could turn off the display because customers kept asking about it. Ethan said the choice was hers, but explained that a continuous record would make the final result stronger. Martha left it on. On the 22nd day, Claire visited without a meeting scheduled and asked whether the test was disrupting business. Martha told her the equipment was not the problem, but corporate visitors who ordered nothing were. Claire bought coffee for everyone at the testing table and then sat out of the way. Ethan noticed the correction. She did not defend herself. She changed her behavior. Lily also watched her father. He checked her school calendar before accepting evening work. When she had a classroom project meeting, he told Martha that the installation would pause for 90 minutes. "You do not need to explain your family schedule to me," Martha said. "I am not asking permission," Ethan replied. "I am telling you before I make a promise somewhere else." Lily heard him and said nothing, but her shoulders relaxed. On the final morning, Martha gathered the owners beside the monitoring display before opening the shop. Energy use in the renovated zone had fallen by 22%. Equipment performance remained stable. Maintenance cost was lower than the company's original estimate. The data matched the range Ethan had submitted before the work began. The clue had been the overlooked electrical proposal. The live audit had corroborated his diagnosis of the problem. 30 days of measured performance now provided conclusive proof that his solution worked. Claire signed the technical approval, then handed the document to Martha first. "The decision is still yours." Martha read every page. "I want the renovation partnership. I keep ownership. My staff stays. No property transfer." "Agreed," Claire said. The print shop chose a service contract. The hardware store requested a separate renovation offer. 2 owners declined entirely, and the company accepted their answer. Ethan received the electrical contract because his work had been tested, measured, and proven. Lily looked at him from across the shop. "You did not decide for anyone." "I almost did. But you stopped." Ethan glanced at Claire, who was listening while Martha requested one final change. So did she. Nothing had been repaired by one generous billionaire or one heroic single father. It had been repaired because power was forced to listen, skill was finally examined, and every person at the table kept the right to speak for themselves. The next 4 months passed through ordinary proof rather than dramatic promises. Martha's coffee shop stayed under her ownership. The old electrical hum disappeared after Ethan completed the approved renovation. The new panel carried the espresso machines, refrigerators, and lights without strain, and the monthly utility bills dropped enough for Martha to replace 2 broken chairs and give her staff more predictable hours. Ethan's work became the approved model for 3 other stores, not because Claire chose him in gratitude, but because every result had been measured, repeated, and reviewed. He remained a one-truck electrician with calloused hands, a faded tattoo on his forearm, and a habit of checking Lily's school calendar before accepting new work. The first time another contractor asked him to take an emergency job during one of Lily's events, Ethan did not answer immediately. He looked at the date, called Lily, and explained the conflict before making a decision. "Can someone else do the first hour?" she asked. "Yes. Then come to my event and go after." "That works. Do not say it works until you confirm." Ethan called the contractor, confirmed the schedule, and called her back. "Now it works." Lily smiled through the phone. That change mattered more to her than any contract. When she had another classroom reading, Ethan arrived 20 minutes early and sat in the front row with his phone turned off. He did not promise that work would never interrupt their lives again. He promised that he would tell her the truth before she had to search for him. Claire changed through repetition too. She visited Martha's shop during scheduled meetings, but she stopped arriving with decisions already completed. She asked before taking a seat at Ethan and Lily's table. She listened when Martha rejected a marketing idea. She allowed two business owners to decline partnership offers without changing the terms offered to everyone else. Grant's review ended with his removal from acquisition work, and every contract he had handled was examined under the new standards. Claire did not treat the correction as a generous act. She called it responsibility. Her company had created the conditions that allowed pressure to replace consent, and she accepted that leadership meant repairing more than public embarrassment. She also changed the contractor review system beyond the coffee shop project. Small companies could now qualify through demonstrated safety performance, technical results, and project-specific capacity instead of being rejected solely for limited annual revenue. Ethan learned about the policy from the updated application, not from Claire. She had not used the reform to impress him. That mattered. Their conversations remained cautious. Sometimes they discussed wiring plans. Sometimes they disagreed about how much documentation a small contractor should provide. Claire believed records protected everyone when memory failed. Ethan believed paperwork could become another gate used against people without office staff. They built a shorter form that preserved safety requirements without demanding information unrelated to the project. Neither received everything they wanted. Both remained at the table. Lily watched those disagreements carefully. "You do not sound like you like each other," she said one afternoon. Ethan looked at Claire. "We disagree. Martha and I disagree about the pastry case," Claire said. "I still like Martha." Martha called from behind the counter. "You are still wrong about the pastry case." Claire smiled. "That proves the point." Lily considered this. "So disagreement is not the same as disrespect?" "It should not be," Ethan said. He remembered how often he had treated resistance as a reason to take over. Claire remembered how often she had treated efficiency as a reason to finish decisions before others entered the room. Neither lesson became easy merely because it had been named. One rainy Thursday afternoon, Ethan finished replacing a light above the pastry case, while Lily completed homework at their usual table. Claire entered wearing a charcoal coat over simple work clothes, no assistant behind her, and no folder in her hands. Martha looked toward the empty chair beside Lily. "Coffee. Only if I am not interrupting." Lily closed her notebook. "You ask that every time." Claire smiled. "I am practicing. You are getting better." Ethan climbed down from the ladder and wiped his hands on a clean cloth. His dark shirt stretched across his broad shoulders, and the faded tattoo on his forearm caught the warm light from the pastry case. "No meeting today? No meeting. No contract. No contract. No emergency?" Claire looked around the shop. "Not one that belongs to me." Martha placed 3 cups of hot chocolate on the table and a black coffee in front of Ethan. "I made an executive decision," she said. Claire raised an eyebrow. "Did you ask everyone?" Lily requested chocolate. "Ethan always drinks coffee. You may refuse yours." Claire sat only after Lily pulled the chair back with one foot. The rain moved softly across the windows, and afternoon light warmed the wooden tables. For several minutes, they spoke about ordinary things. Lily described a school project. Martha complained about the new chairs being too clean. Ethan listened while Claire admitted she had never learned to make coffee without a machine that cost more than his truck. Nothing in the moment resembled the day Grant had ordered her to leave. There was no fear, no public humiliation, and no hidden identity waiting to change the room. Claire had learned that power did not entitle her to closeness. Ethan had learned that dignity did not require him to carry every burden alone. Lily watched both of them carefully, protecting the small piece she and her father had rebuilt. "Claire," she said, "are you coming to the community reading next month?" Claire looked at Ethan before answering. "I was not invited." "I am inviting you." "Then I would like to come." Lily turned to her father. "Is that all right?" Ethan appreciated that she asked him without surrendering her own choice. "Yes." Claire wrapped both hands around the warm cup. "I will put it on my calendar." "Do not promise unless you checked," Lily said. Claire took out her phone, confirmed the date, and showed her the screen. "Now I promise." Ethan laughed quietly. Claire looked at him, uncertain whether she had crossed some invisible line. He understood that expression because he had worn it himself whenever he wanted to help but was learning to wait. "You can stay for dinner," he said. Claire glanced at Lily. Lily nodded. "Martha has sandwiches." "I always have sandwiches," Martha called from the counter. Claire looked back at Ethan. "Are you sure?" He moved his work bag from the fourth chair. "I am not offering because you are a billionaire." "Good. I am offering because you kept showing up differently." Her expression softened. "So did you." Ethan sat beside her, leaving enough space for the choice to remain clear. A few months earlier, he had defended a stranger because respect should not depend on wealth. Now he welcomed the woman she had chosen to become because trust should not depend on one dramatic moment. Lily placed her notebook between them and began explaining her project. Claire listened. Ethan listened. Martha brought 4 sandwiches and turned the shop lights warmer as evening settled outside. Over the following weeks, Claire continued to come to the coffee shop without inventing business reasons. Sometimes she met Martha to review the renovation results. Sometimes she stopped only long enough to drink coffee and ask Lily about school. She never assumed that being welcomed once meant she was entitled to return whenever she wished. Ethan began inviting her before she could ask. The first invitation was for the community reading. The second was for a Saturday breakfast after Lily's school project meeting. The third was simply a message saying that Martha had made too much soup and there was an empty chair. Claire accepted 2 and declined 1 because of a board meeting. She did not send an assistant in her place or try to rearrange everyone else's day. She said she could not come and asked about the next time. Ethan noticed how ordinary trust became when nobody treated it as proof of ownership. Lily noticed too. She still had boundaries. When Claire offered to help prepare a school display, Lily said, "I want Dad to help with this one." Claire answered, "All right." She did not look wounded. The following week, Lily asked her to review a short speech because Claire spoke in front of large groups. Claire asked Ethan first whether he was comfortable with the request. Ethan said, "It is Lily's speech." Then he turned to his daughter. "Do you want both of us to listen?" Lily nodded. They sat at the same coffee shop table where Ethan had once failed to keep a promise, and Lily read while both adults gave her their full attention. At the community reading, Claire arrived 10 minutes early. Ethan was already there. Lily saw both of them before she stepped to the front. She did not have to search for anyone. Afterward, they returned to Martha's shop in light rain. The chairs were nearly empty, and warm lamps reflected in the dark windows. Martha placed 4 sandwiches on the table without asking because Lily had requested them earlier. Claire remained standing near the 4th chair. "Would it be all right if I stayed?" she asked. Lily looked at Ethan. Ethan looked at Lily. Neither rushed to answer for the other. "Yes," Lily said. Ethan moved his work bag from the chair. "There is room." Claire sat beside him. No one announced that something had changed, yet the evening felt different. Ethan had once believed strength meant carrying every cost in silence. Claire had once believed responsibility meant controlling every outcome before anyone could fail. Lily had needed her father to understand that love did not erase disappointment, and Martha had needed every powerful person in the room to respect that her business was hers to choose. Their healing had not arrived as money, promotion, marriage, or a sudden declaration. It arrived through calendars checked before promises, contracts read before signatures, questions asked before help, and shares offered instead of taken. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Martha returned to the counter. Lily opened her notebook and began describing a new school project involving energy use. Claire asked whether the project included measurements. Ethan smiled. "Everything includes measurements now." "That is not a bad habit," Claire said. "It depends who controls the form." "We can argue about that tomorrow." "Are you planning to be here tomorrow?" Claire paused before answering. "I can be here at 6 if I finish the meeting on time. I will send a message by 4 if that changes." Lily nodded approvingly. "That is a proper promise." Ethan looked at Claire. She looked back at him with the same blue eyes that had once measured whether his dignity would survive a cost. Now there was no test between them, only recognition. He turned one hand upward on the table. Claire did not take it immediately. She glanced at Lily, who was busy correcting a number in her notebook, then returned her attention to Ethan. He left his hand where it was, an invitation rather than a demand. Claire placed her hand in his. The gesture was quiet, warm, and small enough to be honest. Ethan did not tell her that he loved her. Claire did not promise that their lives would fit together without difficulty. They had both learned to distrust promises made before the work began. Yet they had also learned that second chances did not require certainty. They required respect, accountability, and the courage to return differently. Martha lowered the lights as closing time approached. Lily gathered her papers and placed the final sandwich between Ethan and Claire because neither had finished eating. "You can share," she said. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Did we ask you to decide that?" Lily smiled. "No, you can refuse." Claire broke the sandwich in half. "I accept." Ethan took the other half. Outside, the rain eased over the block that had kept its businesses, its choices, and its voice. Inside, a single father, a billionaire, and a child who had taught them both about honest promises sat together without needing the room to fall silent. The first silence had come from shock when Claire's identity was revealed. This one came from peace. It held no threat, no debt, and no performance. It held only the steady possibility that two people who had learned to use strength with grace might finally deserve the chance to begin again beside each other.